Welcome to the presentation, Spectacular Sentences.
Please follow along by looking at the corresponding pages in a pocket-style manual. Those pages will be posted on each slide, but it's pretty much at the beginning of the book, starting on page 4 and following. And as you listen to this, you may hear occasional differences in my voice because I'm re-recording portions of this to reflect our newer book. The last few years we used a much larger Hacker Handbook, and we've got a smaller one this year. And I've adjusted that for page numbers and a few wording changes. So you're going to hear the voice that you currently hear now, where I'm a little raspy and I've got some congestion in my chest. And then you'll hear voice from the past, which is a little bit more chipper, a little higher pitched. So enjoy hearing those differences here and there. All right, have fun.
Much of what we're going to focus on in this presentation lesson has to do with actually how to take sentences and cut out the excess, cut out things that aren't needed or make the sentences more confusing. So wordiness, repetition, empty, inflated phrases. And we're also going to talk about some structures that can be confusing and how to change those and make it more straightforward for readers. And the key here is that you're becoming a clearer communicator for your readers, and that's what your readers need, so you can better get your ideas across.
The related pages in the Hacker book are noted on the screen, so please open to that and we'll look at examples there.
First, we're going to look at redundant repetitions, and I like that title that I made because I think it's really very clever of myself to actually have some redundancy in the title about redundancy and repetitions. See what I did there? Okay, good. Pat me on the back for being clever, and let's actually learn something here. We can see some examples here, and they talk about a few different things that can be redundant in a sentence. In other words, repeating unnecessary words or unnecessary ideas that they don't really need to be in there the way that they are in your sentence. So they give some examples here, expressions like cooperate together. Think about that, cooperate. Well, who are you going to cooperate if you're not cooperating together? Obviously that's the only way to cooperate. Yellow in color. Well, yeah, yellow is a color, so you don't need to say it was yellow in color. You just say it was yellow. Basic essentials, and that's one that we use a lot. But again, essentials generally are pretty basic, so we don't need to say both words there. So the idea here is when we use those, oftentimes we think that we're adding emphasis and we're trying to make things a little bit clearer, or we're trying to emphasize a specific idea. And sometimes we do want to do that and find ways to do that, but we also don't want to just weigh our reader down and bog our reader down with extra words and just repeating ourselves. Let's look at the examples here then. First of all, Daniel, and it starts off saying Daniel is now employed at a private rehabilitation center working as a registered physical therapist. And you can see, though, that they cut out is now employed. That's 3 words. You just say Daniel works. And it's a lot clearer. It's very straightforward. And we learned in another lesson about passive and active structures. And this is a more active structure. It works pretty well. And you can also say, take out that working as well, because that doesn't seem to be needed once you just have the word Daniel works, and then so on and so forth. So you can see here that a lot of this is not just about being negative and saying, oh, cut out these repetitious words. It's about choosing better words, and it's about adding in more descriptive words too. It's not just about being negative. Another thing we can do to help make spectacular sentences that requires some cutting is looking at those empty or inflated phrases. And we can see in our Hacker book, we have a few examples. And I'll be honest, if you listen to my presentations especially, but even when I write, I tend to use some of these too. And we all have our favorite pet empty or inflated phrases that we use. And see which ones you can find that you need to cut here. They have some examples here on the bottom of 166. The example that they use in a sentence, they're cutting, in my opinion. And I see this a lot in students' papers where you're clearly telling me what you think, which is perfectly fine and often encouraged, especially if you're trying to work with a thesis statement here. So you don't need to tell me it's your opinion. I'll know it's your opinion. You don't need to tell me. And that sounds like I'm being kind of snarky and mean, but that's the truth. it's an empty or inflated phrase here. And we can see a bunch of other examples. The other sentence example they give, we are unable to provide funding, and they're cutting out at this point in time, just saying now. Again, we like it when people get right to the point. We like it when people are succinct. We want to do the same thing with our own writing. We're going to look at simplifying structures. And the best way to do this is to strengthen the action verb. And I know we do have another presentation all about passive and active, and that will get into this in more detail. But I do want to present this as a way of making your sentence better. Looking at your verb and saying, okay, do I just have a being verb? Do I have a structure that really is just kind of flat? Do I need to add some action to it? So as we look in here, and instead of saying
researchers
were involved in examining the effect of classical music on unborn babies, we're going to cross out a few words and just say
researchers
examined the effect of classical music on unborn babies. Again, that helps us smooth the sentence out a little bit. It's less clunky, and we have one main action verb in there that works really well. We also can see there is and it is, there are, things like that. You can see how to change that. And again, I referenced that in a presentation about passive and active, and as being something else we want to look at. And so here's a specific example here. We can see the second example there too. It is imperative that blah, blah, blah. Again, by taking out it is imperative that and just adding must later on, we have the same exact idea across. It reads just as firmly. We've got our point we're making to people, and it's a little less clunky, it's a little bit less wordy, and we're doing okay. That's a good way to make our sentences more spectacular. Now that you've viewed this presentation and listened to this discussion and this lesson, you can go on and complete the spectacular sentences practice exercise. Make sure you're caught up on your other lessons, and again, make sure you're at the appropriate place throughout the research paper process. And good luck with everything. Thanks.